Hey everybody, it's Mr. Cadell. Welcome to Chapter 8. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've been talking a lot about the chemistry to create things within cells, the organelles which are created by these chemicals, the cells themselves, the membranes of the cells, and messages and how they go through the membrane and then interact with the nucleus of the cell. We're going to press pause. There's only 2 more sections in this entire semester. The final one's going to be genetics, and that's going to take 5 or 6 or 7 chapters. We traditionally do that at the end of the semester. And right now, the unit that we're going to do is energy. Now, you've seen energy before: enzymes, photosynthesis, cellular respiration. That's really this 3-chapter unit on energy. It's chapters 8, 9, and 10 in the Campbell Biology textbook. We're starting here on page 141 in the 10th edition. And we're going to go through 8.1 and 8.2 tonight. This is hard, again, just like chapter 11 is for a lot of kids because it's new. Certainly you know about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. You've seen it many times, but you've never seen it at this level. And you've certainly never seen the stuff that you're about to see in chapter 8 at this level. So have an open mind. Work hard, try to learn as much as you can. Energy is important. Without energy, none of the biological superstructure would be able to survive. So we need energy, and energy is moving through it, and it's going away, and we're getting a constant supply of new energy, and we'll get into all that. But it's just important. So buckle down, and this is a unit that's hard, but I think a lot of kids who work really hard are able to do well on it. I thought that I would start with a movie from Harvard, and I want you to be proud of what you know and find these items: cytoskeleton, the endomembrane system, the Golgi apparatus, transcription, translation. Here's the movie. So that was obviously a white blood cell in the bloodstream. And isn't it cool how the motor proteins, which carry the vesicles, which have encased in them something, often a protein that's been produced by the ribosomes on the endoplasmic reticulum. Isn't it cool how those little motor proteins act like feet in every one of our cells? And they go down the actin and myosin, which make those kind of cytoskeleton components, which act not only as a superstructure for the cell, but also for the highway, is like a highway that vesicles can travel on. Those are my favorite things. Well, be in awe, please, and have an open mind here. We're in chapter 8, and we are just going to go over 8.1 and 8.2. 8.1 is over here on this side of the board, and 8.2 we'll do in a few minutes over here. That's today. So just understand that there's tons of reactions going on inside of cells. Tens of thousands of reactions every second, and in every one of your many trillions of cells. So there's a lot of things happening, and energy needs to power them all. So go ahead and try to interpret this picture to your friend or your stuffed animal, please. What do you see here? Well, I think we've already seen this picture this semester, and I love this picture because it shows the two important things when it comes to energy and matter in biology. Now, matter is energy because contained within matter are covalent bonds which have in them energy. And so the matter of that acacia tree is seen as energy by that giraffe. The giraffe's like, I'm hungry, I need energy, and I'm going to go eat those leaves. So it sees it as matter, but it's going to change it into energy. And so if you look at the big, I guess it's going this way, the big gray circle in this picture, it's showing that matter is cycled, right? We know that. And that energy comes in as sunlight. The producers harness that energy, and what they try to do is they try to combine water and carbon dioxide with that energy to create these covalent bonds here, hold the sun's energy. You can see then that this is chemical potential energy, and then the consumers like a giraffe come along, and then they eat the leaves, and without knowing it, they're eating these molecules, and within the molecules are these bits of sunlight here, and then they're going to put that in their bloodstream, going to go to their mitochondria. They're going to then break these bonds and try to harness that energy. The problem is that it's extraordinarily inefficient. In fact, only 1% of the sun's rays that hit our planet are transformed into these captured in these bonds through the process of photosynthesis. 99% is reflected back into space. It's absorbed by rocks or things like that, but it's very inefficient. And then of the 1% that are put into molecules, of the 1%, then that is eventually, then even that a portion of that 1% is consumed. When that occurs, when these bonds are broken, it's super inefficient as far as capturing the sunlight's energy that's in here for a consumer to then utilize. It's only 39% efficient, which means it's 61% inefficient. The conversion of the energy from here into actual energy of motion, let's say of powering this giraffe through the savanna by contracting its muscles. It's even worse with fossilized plant and animal remains that have been exposed to heat and pressure over millions of years that we call oil or coal or something like that. We try to burn that. It's like 75% inefficient. So whenever you go to the gasoline pump and you see how much money it is per gallon or how much money you've put in your tank, only about 25% of that is going to actually go to spin the axles and then spin the wheels of your car and propel you down the road. 75% of the money you put into your gas tank is lost as heat. Heat is a big factor here, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. Energy flows into into an ecosystem in the form of light and exits in the form of heat. There has to be a constant supply of new energy in the form of sunlight, or this whole thing breaks down. So that's what happened with the dinosaurs when purportedly that at the KT event, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, when that Mount Everest-sized meteor hit, and it put up dust for about 2 to 3 years in the atmosphere. It was really dark on the planet, and apparently that lack of sunlight caused a ton of photosynthesis to stop, And then there was nothing for the animals to eat. And not only was it cold and there wasn't much oxygen being produced, but the food was a big problem there. We'll get into evolution later. An organism's metabolism transforms matter and energy subject to these laws right here, the two laws of thermodynamics. So you're going to hear this term metabolism. It's just the sum total of all the chemical reactions that occur within cells. Well, you may have seen a picture like this before. This is just showing that you can have reactants that then are catalyzed by enzymes to become products. So A might be a reactant and B might be a product, or D might be a product. What I'm trying to show you here is that often in biology, again, this is similar to the signal transduction pathway, the product of one reaction, so enzyme 1 and reaction 1, the product of that is B, but that then becomes the reactant in the second reaction, and then the product is C, and then it goes in a chain like that. This allows us to have control and amplification, for sure. Metabolic pathways always begin with reactants and ends with products, eventually. There are specific enzymes here. These are just proteins that help strain the bonds. You're going to learn in this chapter what enzymes do. This thing will fit into an enzyme, and then the enzyme will pull this and strain these bonds so that they will break more easily, and then maybe reform and create the product. Maybe these atoms get reshaped into other molecules, for instance. Often enzymes, though, don't work on reactants that wouldn't have ordinarily broken down by themselves. So the idea is, and we're going to get to that over here, is this bond would eventually break if we just left it alone by itself. Maybe in the environment there would be enough energy to vibrate this bond and it would eventually break. But what enzymes do is they speed up reactions because they're going to stretch this bond in an uncomfortable position, so it needs less energy from the environment to break. So enzymes speed up reactions. That's what they do. Here's a movie on.
Many of the enzyme-catalyzed reactions that occur in a cell, such as those involved in the biosynthesis of an amino acid, are carried out in a specific sequence called a biochemical pathway. In such pathways, the product of one reaction becomes the substrate for the next reaction. If the end product of a pathway, such as an amino acid, becomes available in the environment, it is unnecessary and wasteful for the cells to continue to produce the product. Cells, therefore, have the ability to shut down a pathway when it is not needed. In feedback inhibition, the end product of the pathway reacts with the first enzyme that is unique to the pathway. The reaction occurs at a site on the enzyme that is different from the active site, called the allosteric site. When the product binds to the allosteric site, the enzyme undergoes a conformational change and can no longer react with its substrate. There is no substrate for subsequent steps in the pathway, and the final product is no longer synthesized.
So that phenomenon we already learned about, that's the negative feedback inhibition. We'll see that again in this chapter. So there's two major things that you need to memorize here, and I would like you to press pause and write this down. What you see here is the cellular respiration, sometimes known as respiration, equation going from left to right. And we see photosynthesis going from right to left. So go ahead and press pause and write this down, please. And remember what cellular respiration is. It is the breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen. We do this in our mitochondria, and the whole point is to break these bonds and try to harness this energy and add another phosphate group to an ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, to make adenosine triphosphate. Then that bond between the second and third phosphate group is energetic, and it's vibrating, and a microsecond or maybe a second or two later, that bond can then break and then power something in the body, like contracting muscles to help us walk down the hallway. The idea is that this is called an exothermic reaction, where energy is going to exit when this bond is broken, and then endothermic reactions are ones that take in energy, and we'll talk about this more over here, and then they use that energy from the release of exothermic reactions to power themselves. You might guess by looking at this that photosynthesis that's going this direction is an endothermic reaction. We need to add energy in. in order to put CO2 and H2O together. That's where the atoms come from here to make this glucose molecule plus some oxygens as well. I'd like you to write down one number. This is an important number in biology. All this is showing you that when cellular respiration occurs and all those bonds are broken in glucose, that 686 kilojoules per mole, mole of glucose are liberated or released. Likewise, when we put H2O plus carbon dioxide together in the presence of sunlight, this is how much sunlight energy we need in order to build the products of that reaction, which would be oxygen and glucose. I have this also up here. I don't know if you can see it yet, but you'll be able to. It's on a placard that's up here. This is called catabolism, when we break something down into simpler compounds. So this thing is very unstable, it's very complex, and then the products of this reaction from left to right here are very simple, and there's less energy in those products, in carbon dioxide and water, than there was in the reactants, glucose and oxygen, 6 oxygen molecules. And I know that because energy is released in this amount when we go from left to right. Well, here's photosynthesis. It's the synthesis of glucose and oxygen from water and carbon dioxide and some added in light energy. This is called anabolism. Anabolic, I was thinking of anabolic steroids. People take anabolic steroids to build things up. And this is a pathway from right to left here where we're building things. We're building complex molecules from simpler ones. We need to add in energy to do that. Well, let's get to energy, finally down here. And there's really 2 types of energy that we need to talk about, potential and kinetic energy. So I'm going to press pause, you press pause, and identify the potential and kinetic energy in this picture, please. Well, you probably know that potential energy can reside in a compound or a molecule like this, glucose. There's a lot of potential energy in all of these covalent bonds that you see here in these hydrocarbons. And that energy can be changed to kinetic energy when those bonds break. But there's also the energy of position. Potential energy, you might remember this from middle school or from physics, is mass times the gravitational constant of 10 meters per second squared times height. So it's the energy of position. And so this is a picture out of your textbook, and it's similar to this pen that's not sitting very well up here. I would do this normally on a table. And the idea is that this has a lot of potential energy. Just like if I was to burn it, there's a lot of potential energy in the bonds between the atoms in here. But also, this is the energy of position, which means if I was to push this off here, it has a ton of potential energy. We could calculate that, and that potential energy, I put this green arrow here, is going to change into kinetic energy, the energy of motion. So let's see what happens. So I know you couldn't see it hit the ground, but the point is that all the potential energy, whatever number is here, is changed to kinetic energy, the energy of motion, and then also, I guess, the energy of sound. And there's also some frictional energy, some heat release when this thing hits the ground. But the point is that energy can change forms from potential to kinetic. Remember, kinetic energy is the energy of motion. This is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So I will tell you this, right before this pen hit the ground, whatever number was here, all the potential energy had been converted to kinetic energy, the millisecond before this thing touched the ground. So it has changed from one to another. Similar to this, if we were to break these bonds and harness this potential energy, we could change that into kinetic energy for our heart to beat, for nervous impulses to conduct down our neurons, for our eyes to move around, or whatever we need.
Rolling over, crashing down the mountain. That's kinetic energy. Kinetic. The boulder sitting high upon the mountain. That's potential energy. Potential energy of motion is kinetic energy. That's
or that's the best I can do. Let's talk about these two laws of thermodynamics here. So basically thermodynamics is when we study how energy changes from one state to the next. Like I said, there's sound energy, there's frictional energy, there's kinetic energy, there's potential energy, there's a variety of different types of energy. Here's some chemical energy that exists in this antelope that's been taken down by this cheetah. This would be potential energy, and it's going to be changed into kinetic energy for the cheetah to run. And this is the example they'll give you in your textbook. Write this down, please. The first law of thermodynamics is that the energy of the universe is constant. It can be transferred or transformed, but it cannot be created or destroyed. Do you remember how I said that, that when this cheetah eats some of this animal and converts it from potential to kinetic energy, a lot will be lost as heat? Well, that will be lost out to space, and it's not going to be destroyed. It will just warm up space, I guess. And the energy can't be created either. I guess it just exists in the nuclear reactions of the sun as they occur, and then I'm not a physicist, so trust me here. Well, let's take it back down to biology. We can't create energy when it comes to these things on our planet. Sorry, I should stay in my lane, right? Not a physical scientist. Can't be created, can't be destroyed, only changed. Just file that away until you get a physics class, and then please ask as many questions as you want. I don't know the answers to them. Here's the cheetah running, and you can see heat is being released, and it's changing the potential energy in the bonds of the glucose that is eaten in the meat into kinetic energy to help it move. Well, here's the second law of thermodynamics. During every energy transformation, some energy is unusable and it's lost as heat. So we've already defined this, and you can just write down, during energy transformation, some is lost as heat. Every energy transformation increases the entropy of the universe. And what we mean by that is this. So if we were to take this little plastic model here, and I was to place it on the table for 1,000,000 years in this classroom, what do you think would happen to it over that time? Anything that's highly structured and complex is going to break down over time, right? 1,000,000 years from now, I don't know what this thing would look like, but it certainly probably wouldn't look like this. And the point is that things go from ordered to disordered. The idea is that we have this ordered molecule, this glucose molecule, and it's going to go from ordered to disordered, this direction, making carbon dioxide and water. I've shown you this picture of your room. Isn't it great? Every time you clean your room, entropy takes over, and it goes from ordered to disorder. It's just a tendency towards disorder in the universe. So energy must always flow into an ecosystem in the form of light, and it exits in the form of heat. So I try all the time to get as many good videos as I can to support my lecture. This is all I could get for this section.
The first law of thermodynamics. Heat is work and work is heat.
Heat is work and work is heat.
Very good. The second law of thermodynamics. Heat cannot of itself pass from one body to a hotter body.
Heat cannot of itself pass from one body to a hotter body.
Heat won't pass from a cooler to a hotter.
Heat won't pass from a cooler to a hotter.
You can try it if you like, but you far better not.
You can try it if you like, but you're far better not.
Just the cold make the cooler will get hotter as a ruler.
The cooler will get hotter as a ruler.
Because the harder body's heat will pass in the cooler.
Because the harder body's heat will pass
That's all. Heat is work and work is heat and work is heat and heat is work. Heat will pass by conduction.
Heat will pass by.
I'm sorry. I know the quality is just going downhill. I get it. Sorry about that. But we're going to change direction here in just a moment. But I want to let you know that, in fact, it's so efficient when you break down glucose, when you're exercising strenuously, that in the span of 7 minutes, you create enough heat, excess lost potential energy as heat, to boil a liter of water. Isn't that crazy? 7 minutes is so much heat you produce if we were able to capture that around your body. Go ahead and press pause and take a look at these items and make sure that you have the first section of this lecture down. Well, I want you to press pause again because in just a moment, because I want you to copy down all of this and write it down. Don't just watch this and be a passive writer. I really want you to write this because we're going to get into some concepts here. I want you to put your own spin on the notes. It doesn't take very long. In concept 8.2, the title of it is "The free energy change of a reaction tells us whether or not the reaction occurs spontaneously." Well, I put up here delta G because this is all about the change in G. And what G is it's the free energy of any reaction. You can imagine of photosynthesis and cellular respiration that there's free energy here. There's either free energy liberated or released when the reactants in cellular respiration break down from left to right here, or there's free energy that's added in to the reactants on the right side here in photosynthesis so that the products will be made on the left. So we can measure the change in energy once a reaction occurs. We can see a reaction, it can stop, and we can say, okay, what happened with energy? Did we add energy in, or did energy come out, essentially? Well, what I'm showing you here is the AP Biology equations and formulas page. This is something that you're going to have on the exam day. They will give this to you, and you are expected not to memorize all these formulas or equations, but you're expected to be able to use them if you're given the information in order to do so. So if you look over here, you'll see something called Gibbs free energy. It's just an equation here to help calculate the free energy change of a reaction. Now, on the right side of the equal sign, there's two things there. There's a change in enthalpy, which I looked it up before the lecture, but I even forgot it because I don't even know what it is. And then you can see that T is the absolute temperature in kelvins. You just add plus 273 to whatever it is in Celsius. And then S is a change in entropy. We know what entropy is. So you're not supposed to be able to calculate entropy or enthalpy, but you got to kind of know at least what entropy is. And then they'll give you numerical values, and then you just plug it and chug it to get some sort of answer here. Well, make sure that you watch Mr. Anderson's video on this. It's pretty good. This is not something I'm very good at all. I'm good at evolution, talking about ecology and maybe the cell or something, but when it comes to all this kind of energy stuff, not as good. So I'm going to let him do it for me. Well, this is kind of the last bit of pictures that we're going to see for this section of the chapter. What I want you to notice here is that along the top we have things that are, and then those things can change spontaneously into their products. You can see the person might fall off the diving board, or we have all these atoms in the middle there that are near one another, and by diffusion they want to get away from each other. And then we have an organized molecule like a glucose, which might spontaneously break down, if given enough time and energy from the environment, into its products. Well, understand that when these things happen, work occurs, or the capacity to cause change can occur. Specifically, like with cellular respiration, when that glucose molecule breaks down and we get these products that are kind of less energetic, that energy can be used to perform work. This is gravitational motion. This is diffusion. We saw evidence of this in an earlier chapter where these kind of proton pumps set up these gradients on the outsides of cells where you have all these ions of similar charge, these hydrogen ions, for example, and they're there and they're all mad at each other because they have the same charge and they want to get away from each other, and like charges are repelling. So when a chute or a channel protein opens up where they can go through, that work of them by diffusion going through that back into the cell can be utilized to co-transport something against its concentration gradient, like sucrose or potential energy of carbohydrate, into the cell, so the cell can break that down to make more ATP to continue this process, essentially. That's where the work is done as the sucrose is coming through the membrane. And then finally, chemical reactions. We've been talking about that this entire lecture so far. So here's kind of the last picture that we'll see. These items, and you can just focus on glucose molecule if you like. This thing has a higher delta G than its products. It's less stable, meaning this thing has a tendency to break down if it is able to, but it has greater work capacity than its products. I'm going to read this to you. In a spontaneous change, the free energy of the system decreases. So let's write something up here on the board. So this is our example up here. If something has a negative delta G, or delta G is less than 0, meaning that when the reaction occurs, we say, what happened? Well, energy was lost. It's less than 0 or it's negative. And this is what happens in cellular respiration. Also, we call this an exothermic reaction, or energy is exiting here. Understand that heat is also going to exit. And I'm going to write down the word spontaneous, meaning this only occurs in reactions that would have happened by themselves if given enough time. Our example here is cellular respiration. As a result of this occurring, the system becomes more stable because the products have less energy than the reactants did. Energy is released, and that free energy then can be harnessed to do work. And that's going to be a big concept in 8.3. During a spontaneous change, free energy decreases. You see that here. And the stability of a system then increases. I would like to say, does anyone have any questions on that? But I know I'm talking to a screen right now. Almost done here. Only processes with negative delta G are spontaneous. They have less free energy, they're more stable, and they have less work capacity. Sorry, the products do, though in this case, the water and the carbon dioxide that are produced in cellular respiration. So before we go any further, let's look at the other side of the coin here. Let's look at photosynthesis. We know that in photosynthesis, energy is added in. So photosynthesis occurs, and you make glucose from the addition of light energy to water and carbon dioxide. We know that it has a plus 600, looking over here, 686 kilojoules per mole. We know that delta G is positive. We know that this is something called endothermic. And what I mean by that, the EN, I always think of entrance, or energy is entering. We won't talk about heat here, but you could say that this is non-spontaneous. Meaning, if you had a bunch of water molecules, carbon dioxide molecules, and some energy, and you just kind of, if you had a bunch of water molecules and carbon dioxide molecules, they would not get together and make this ever. It's not spontaneous. Only when you add in energy, and then if you have the, obviously in the chloroplasts of plants, for instance, there's the correct enzymes and all these pathways, the dark and light reactions, and these things have to happen in order to make this. But it would never spontaneously happen on its own. Thanks. That's it for 8.1 and 8.2. I know this stuff is hard, so make sure that you come see me, that you ask me for help. If you need it, it's not easy. You have to grind here. 8.4 at the end on enzymes is a lot easier, and we'll do a lab on that. It's more fun. And then all 8.3 deals with is harnessing the energy release here to power these types of reactions in the body. Thanks for your attention.